Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of life groups, and hopefully last week was great. Hopefully you've been coming for a while, or if this is your first week ever to small groups, welcome. How's it going? We're gonna go through a couple of questions relating to last week's sermon, and it's gonna be really great. We're really excited. So we're gonna start it off. At the beginning of the message, my dad, Pastor Tom, talked about how generosity is rewarded. And so I started thinking about it, and this is kind of an open question that there's probably going to be a lot of different answers to. But what do you think the greatest reward you could ever receive is? And it could be anything. But think about it for a while. What's the greatest reward that you could ever receive? And just take a couple minutes, our little icebreaker question, but take a couple minutes and answer that. Ready, set, go. Okay, on to the next one. That was great. There was one of you sitting in the back left, a little too talkative, so you gotta keep it down, but just kidding. So the next question we wanna ask is kind of moving along in the message. We talked about how generosity comes from the heart. And so here's a question. I want to ask, what holds us back from having a generous heart? What holds us back from being a generous person? And so you could ask generally, but then if you'd be so bold, I'd love if we could all kind of answer the question, like, what personally holds me back from being a generous person or having a generous heart? So in the moments when I find myself not being generous, what's the reason? So take a couple minutes, talk about that. What holds us back from having a generous heart? Ready, set, go. All right, so we're back. Question number 3. This whole series has been about generosity, which revolves around the idea of giving. And so, simple question, and this might be a really quick one, or it has the potential to get kind of deep, but it's a simple question to start off, is what is the best reason to give? What is the number one reason that we should give? And I think there's an answer. I'll tell you my answer when we get back, but what's the number one reason we should give? What's the best reason that we should give? Ready, set, go. All right, we're back. The answers were great. My answer, and I could be wrong, so you can argue with me if you will in the comment section, but I think the number one reason to give is just obedience, is because God asks us to, because sometimes we're sitting in a Starbucks and God speaks to us in that small whisper and says that we ought to pay for somebody and bless them, or whatever it might be. We get that pulling on our heart. And so I think the number one reason to be generous is just to obey and to obey Jesus. But obviously there's people in need. There's people who could really use it. There's people who'll be blessed by it and will be blessed by it. So I think those are all good reasons. But personally, I think the best reason is obedience. And so if my dad said something different in your small group, the empty nesters and everybody else, then all right, it wasn't me, okay? I didn't do it. And he's right, so go with that one. But anyways, our last question is simply, at the end of the message, we talked about how generosity brings joy. And so the question is, if generosity produces joy, does a lack of generosity or maybe greed produce sorrow or depression or things of that nature? So if generosity produces joy, does greed or the opposite of generosity produce sorrow, depression, maybe even anger, anxiety, those types of things? And if so, why? So take time to answer that. A lack of generosity, does that produce sadness and anger and all those types of things? So have a good one with that one. Take your time with it. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.